Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio, so today it's time to talk about Garbodor. But not that Garbodor that we've all known and loved for some time now, a new Garbodor coming out in the Guardians Rising expansion. Now, first of all, it's only a little point, but the new Trubbish that's going to be coming out in Guardians Rising has a nice little starting attack. If you have to attack with Trubbish, 1 Psychic Energy, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. Maybe you get lucky and hit something like a double colourless energy that's really important, or a Versus Seeker, or something else they really want, but it actually combos really nicely with Garbodor's good attack. More on that in a moment. Now, 120 HP is fine, and the fact that he's a Psychic type is not great. I mean, it does mean you'll be hitting weakness against Persimmon, Mewtwo, and Espeon, but at the moment, that really is about it. Now, he's weak to Psychic, but this really isn't very important, because Mega Mewtwo doesn't even hit for weakness, so yeah, nobody really cares about the weakness here. Retreat cost of 3, I mean, Garbodor was always going to have a high retreat cost, but it does mean that he can use heavy boots here, which means that he can get some extra HP and ward off that pesky confusion. Although, let's be honest, just like this Garbodor, he is basically going to be using Floatstone most of the time, or if he's attacking, he'll be using Choice Band so that you do an extra 30 to EX and GX Pokemon. Now, the second attack here, Psychic, colourless, 70 damage, not particularly good. Now you can use double colourless energy, which is fine. And on a coin flip, if you flip a heads, you do get to discard an energy of your opponent's active Pokemon, but there's just better things. I mean, Lycanroc GX is better. So really, if you want to get rid of energy, there are better options. But the first attack of Garbodor here, that is the headline, that is why we love him. 1 Psychic Energy, and I've long been a fan, and anyone that's been watching these videos for a while will know. Single energy attachment, oh yes. This attack does 20 damage times the number of item cards in your opponent's discard pile. So if they've got 9 item cards in a discard, which is really not outside the realms of possibility in most decks, then you're doing 180 for a single energy. If they're not an EX or a GX, that will be a KO. And if they are an EX or a GX, you stick a Choice Band on Garbodor, you're now hitting for 210, and against all but the hardiest of EXs and GXs, that will be a KO. This is going to build up very, very quickly here. It is an awesome attack. Let's face it, most people are playing 4 Ultra Ball, Versus Seeker, Trainer's Mail, and goodness knows what other items. If they're playing Special Energy, they're playing Special Charge. Most decks are playing Super Rod. Lots of decks are playing cards like Nest Ball or Level Ball. I could keep going, but I'm hoping you get the idea here. And of course, going back to Trubbish's attack, if you happen to hit an item card with Trubbish's first attack, that means you're doing an extra 20 damage. And here's what's really good here. If your opponent doesn't want Pokemon or basic energy in their discard, they can use Super Rod. If your opponent doesn't want special energy in their discard, they can use Special Charge. If they don't want supporters in the discard, they can use something like Versus Seeker. But if they don't want item cards in the discard, there really isn't very much they can do other than playing something like Puzzle of Time, but then you can get 2 item cards out of the discard by putting 2 item cards into the discard. And that's what I really, really like here. Your opponent is going to struggle because once the item cards are in the discard, they're basically not coming back out again. And even decks like Vileplume nowadays tend to play an awful lot of item cards so they can get the Vileplume up nice and early to hurt their opponent. Though you could make a fairly evil combo here with something like Noctowl or Trevenant that do damage depending on the number of item cards in your opponent's hand, so that way if they're in your opponent's hand you punish with Trevenant or Noctowl, and then when they're in the discard you punish with Garbodor. Now I'm not saying Noctowl's brilliant, I'm saying it could be a fun combo. I mean, think of decks like Tauros Garbodor Hammers, a deck which I've made no secret I'm a fan of. Well, what they do is they play fewer energy cards and fewer Pokemon cards so they can play more item cards like Crushing Hammer, like Enhanced Hammer. Well, decks like that, don't forget, Garbodor attacks for a single energy, and takes advantage of all the cards your opponent has already played. Now, Garbodor is going to be awkward in terms of a tech Pokemon because it's a stage 1 and because he uses Psychic Energy. It might not be a Pokemon that's super easy to chuck into whatever deck you like, but if you've got room for Garbodor and you can play Psychic Energy, I really like Garbodor. Maybe as a 1-1 tech in Mega Mewtwo decks or in anything that can be playing Psychic Energy. It could be a really good card. And of course, because it only takes 1 energy, so you don't have to play that much energy, and because it's a stage 1, there is going to be room to play this with something else. Maybe you play Garbodor with Tauros, but instead of playing the ability locking Garbodor, you play this one. Or maybe you play a little bit of a mixture. Not saying Tauros is the best option here. I'm saying that because it's a stage 1 that uses a single energy, you could play it with basically anything, so whatever matchups you're worried about, just play something that beats that matchup. The best part of this is that your opponent, the only real way to play around Garbodor is your opponent going, ha ha ha, I am not going to play my item cards I want to play so that you don't get any extra damage. Brilliant! Your opponent is not playing their deck properly and is not doing things they want to do to stop you doing extra damage. I'm cool with that, ladies and gentlemen. This is such a good attack that I have got to give Garbodor 4 Wassies. It's a brilliant attack. It punishes so many decks, and it's just awesome. I like this Garbodor. Don't like Garbodor as a Pokemon, but I do like this attack, and it's certainly a Pokemon with which I will be experimenting when this set is released. Now, you know the deal, ladies and gentlemen. There is a comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. There are buttons to both like this video and subscribe to this channel. I would be delighted if you would use them both. You can find me on Twitter @TheWassie, and the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.